Hey, I'm Chris from Make Everything, and today we are here to talk about my new tool. This is a Beaudry Peerless power hammer. Very rare hammer from 1915. I'm gonna tell you all about it. Check it out. Now, how this power hammer came to be in my possession is kind of a funny story. Now, I'm always looking for tools on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and everything. So one night back in September of 2021, just about a week before my wedding, I happened to see this on Marketplace. It was maybe like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Popped up, I immediately sent the seller a message. It was in Northern Connecticut, and I saw this unique looking power hammer that I'd never seen before, and it was for a price that I was excited about, even if the thing didn't work. So I sent him a message. I said, I'm interested and that I want it. Before I even knew anything about it, I told him that I wanted it. I said, how can I send you a deposit? I can't get up there, whatever. So I was able to get the guy to talk to me on the phone. And if you're a buyer of used tools, you'll very quickly learn that when you offer to pay for something online, like, oh, let me Venmo you or PayPal you money, that's like a surefire way to lose the deal, because especially if it's someone that's not familiar with online payments, they immediately think that you're trying to scam them. So called the guy. I said, listen, talk to me on the phone for 5 minutes and you'll know that I'm legit and that I'm not trying to scam you. So I called him up. We had a nice conversation. He told me all about the hammer. He told me about a couple of little things that were quirky on it, some repairs that he had done. And he said, listen, I'd be happy to take money over the internet. I just don't know how to do it. So I convinced this guy to download Venmo, taught him how to use it. I sent him $5 as like a starter. And I said, take the money, put it in your bank account. You'll know it's legit. As soon as he said yes, I sent him all the money for the hammer, and I told him that my friend Paul Pinto would be going to pick it up. So Paul's got an amazing flatbed truck, and he went, picked it up. The guy put it on his truck with a trailer. So now about 5 months later, Paul's finally kind of coordinated with me to bring the hammer down so I don't have to try to get it in my van. And here it is. Now we had a real time getting it off the truck and getting it in here, so check that out.
Yeah, that's why I said drop it down before it dies and get the f*** out of here. Turn it off. Come on, keep it alive. I'll keep it alive. She's dead.
So a little bit of history on this hammer, from what I remember, what the seller had told me, was that it was being used in like a sawmill where there was a line shaft, and some blacksmiths were using it to, I think, make cold chisels. And the guy that I got it from that spot, and they totally restored it. He's the one that painted it, got it running, and they ran it for a long time in New England. In 2013, he put it into a shipping container where it sat until 2021. When he took it out of the container, and probably within a half an hour of him listing it, I had already secured it. So if you are in New England and you are surprised that you didn't catch this out on Marketplace, it's because I got to it fast. So this hammer has a really interesting ram linkage here. It's got these two sort of knuckles that overlap each other, and then these arms here, which I guess these would be toggle arms. And the ram goes in a guide here, and you can see there's Zerk fittings on it, which are obviously not factory. This was made, 107 years ago, so those would have been just oil spouts, but it's been modernized. So you can see as I drop the ram, you can see the way those toggle arms right here and this linkage move up and down. So there's a little bit of a snapping action. As it falls, it's snapping down. Now, we don't know the exact weight of the ram yet. It's believed to be 75 pounds. That's what the guy I bought it from thought it was. But based on its size being a number 2, it could be 50 pounds. We'll know soon enough because I'm going to probably take it out and weigh it. But I'm really intrigued by this linkage, and one of the things my friend Chris Cash was kind of warning me about was on hammers with unique linkages, you have to be careful because there's a reason that they didn't make a lot of these. And I have a feeling it's because these arms may have broken in the past. Now, these would have been cast, but over here is very smooth and it looks like it's been blended and ground. So if I would guess, I would almost be sure that this broke at one point and then somebody welded it back together. And then when they restored it and painted it, that's why it looks so nice. So taking a close look at these dies, you can see that this bottom one is a mess. So it's been welded to, and it looks like it originally had a hole in the side, possibly to hold a kind of bolt like this, which locks in the top die, which you can kind of just drop out. There's a bolt on both sides. If we took those out, the top die would fall out, and it's rounded. Now this bottom die is far too tall. It should probably be maybe about that high. So I'm gonna pull this out eventually. I'm either going to modify this one, depending on the condition that it's in, or I'm going to make a new one. Since it almost looks like this must have cracked and they welded this on to salvage it, but I could just make a new bottom die if I had to, or I could make a bottom die and then put a chamfer in it and then try to make like a quick change die in order to make it a little more useful. But this is a very small area in here to work with, and this is the ram as high as it goes. It's about 1.5 inches. And it would be cool to be able to put a top tool in there so that I could work on small material with a top tool. So I'm going to try to get the most throw out of this as I can, which I can adjust on the linkage up above. So looking up here at the cam, you can see that there's a little gap and there's a bolt up here. So by turning this bolt, I'll basically push the cam downward, which would actually extend the throw. And then if you can imagine this upside down, which I'll try to spin it, upside down, if I were to screw out that nut, it would actually bring this up higher. Now, by doing all that, I'll be able to adjust the throw of the ram. And then also you can see this shaft here, there's a lot of room on it. If I loosen this, I should be able to adjust this whole thing to open up the width between those dies and give me a little more throw and hopefully optimize the power that this thing puts out. Now, obviously there's a lot of tuning on this and I really don't know anything about these, so it's going to be a ton of trial and error to get this right. And while we're up here, we can look at kind of where the tower would be, because there's actually an extra set of bolts over here on the kind of drive shaft area, and that tower that I showed you would be mounted up here and it would go straight up. So this drive wheel pulley setup came with the hammer. Now, looking at this, I can kind of imagine how this was set up. So this would have run a flat belt down to the drive wheel, and these towers would have been bolted to where the shaft bearings are. Now, this section I'm sort of still deciphering because in my mind, this would be the drive wheel for some belts off of either a line shaft or whatever. And this to me kind of seems like almost like a counterweight. Now, I don't really know why you would need this, but I'm gonna figure it out. So this setup is a little bit loose and the way it kind of wobbles, and then the bearings, while they do rotate, they don't spin very freely. So my plan is to actually rebuild this whole thing, but use these pulleys just because they were already used and hopefully are somewhat the correct size. So now the way this hammer would have ran, if you're familiar with power hammers, you might be familiar with like a Little Giant that has a motor mounted to it. Now this would have been ran off of a line shaft, and the line shaft would have had a belt that went straight up, and the belt would have run flat on this, and then as the belt traveled up, you'd see this idler wheel up here, which would basically act as a clutch, and there's a brake shoe over here. So right now the pedal is up, and if the motor was running, a belt would be running loosely on this main drive wheel. When I press down the treadle arm here, you see how that kind of clutch engages, and if you look closely, you're seeing that this brake shoe is also lifting off. So that's what's basically freeing up the ram to spin, and this is applying pressure. So you'll have a lot of ability to adjust how much is going into this drive wheel on the belt by pressing this large treadle with your foot, and that's going to allow the ram to actuate. Now, since I don't have a line shaft and I want to just run this off an electric motor, I'm going to have to use the motor tower that I showed you outside, and that's going to go up top. And I can show you a photo of this same style hammer that was set up, the one that is in North Dakota. I found a photo online of it, and it gives you kind of a good idea as to sort of how other people have set one of these hammers up without using a line shaft. So there's this hole cut in the side of the hammer, and when I was looking at photos of it, I was sure that it was because someone cut off a bronze tag. But if you look closely, you can see that the bronze tag actually would have been much bigger than this hole. And what we found out was that this hole is actually not because of the bronze tag, but it's because of that bar that you can see in there. So that bar is the linkage that goes from the treadle up to the idler wheel. And if you look up here, you can see, so that is the bar that's inside the body of the hammer. Now, if you don't have that bolt connected, it's really hard to get to. So what I've come to assume is that at some point, the linkage connector in there must have broken. It's been welded. And in order for them to resolve it, they had to get inside the hammer. There's no way to get inside this cast base. So someone flame cut a hole in the side just to basically make it easier to get to it. And we actually used it to our advantage because when I got the hammer, the linkage was not connected to the arm. So right now, I have my foot on the treadle. If you don't have that linkage connected, there's no way to move the idler arm. So this hole actually came in handy. Now, because there's one more of these hammers out there, there is a photo I can get of the original brass tag, and I'll be able to have one made or figure out a way to make one myself, because I would like to replace it and it'd be nice to cover that hole. So the seller that I bought it from told me about one other repair that had been done to the machine, and I believe that he said he did it himself. So the ram guide over here cracked, and you can just sort of see it. And this was pinned and welded before they painted it. And the other thing that him and his friends did was they put a large plate here on the bottom. And now this plate has a ton of screws that go around it. And that plate is to sort of just re-support the ram guide and hopefully holds up. Now, he told me that they did this repair many years ago and they ran the hammer for years after they did the repair and it held up. So I'm pretty confident in it. And even if it does break, you know, we'll figure out a way to fix it. All right, that about does it for this video. So like I said, there's only a couple of these kind of left known to exist. And I know there's one in the States at Alan Lake's place, but other than that, I'm not really sure that any of these are in the US anymore, which is really cool, but also a little bit scary, right? Because why wouldn't there be more of them, right? And anything that has complicated linkages like this and sort of were like experiments by companies, especially in the early 1900s, usually the reason that there aren't more of them is because they don't work that well or they break. Now, this hammer, like I showed you, has a couple of repairs to it. And obviously, once I get a motor on it, I'm really going to find out how it works. The guy I got it from had been running it, and he didn't stop running it for any reason other than he kind of just lost interest and put it in storage. That was 10 years ago. You can see how free the action is and how free the flywheel is, and that's sort of just telling of the condition of the hammer. It is in really good shape, especially since, you know, it is 107 years old. So I don't think it's going to take much to get running, but there's a lot of tuning that can be done on this hammer up over at the cam up here and with the linkages and with these dies, you know, all stuff that I'm going to take care of. So if you want to see this hammer running and hitting steel, you're going to have to stay tuned for the next video where I'm going to be building the motor tower and get everything together. I am so anxious to do it. It's going to be coming soon because I was going to wait. And now that it's here, I got to get it going. So I've already ordered parts. I've already ordered drive shafts and pillow blocks. I have a motor lined up and all that stuff. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe to my channel. Hit the little notification bell so you know when that video comes out. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And leave a comment down below if you've ever seen a hammer quite like this one. Thank you to all my friends that helped me get this in the shop, especially Paul for bringing it down and actually initially picking it up for me when I bought it. Matt, Macklin, Tommy, and my friends Chris Cash, Kevin Willie, and Andrew Alexander for helping kind of guide me and advise me on this thing. So I'm so excited to have this, and I cannot wait to have it hitting metal. So stay tuned. Follow me right here on Instagram at Make Everything Shop if you want to see what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. Posted a lot of little clips of me bringing this in and moving my whole shop around to get it to fit. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm super excited. I can't wait to bring you guys along on the journey of getting this running, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.